Syracuse football goes unranked in the latest AP poll. What do the Orange have to do going forward to crack the top 25?
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and we're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And on today's mini podcast, Syracuse football is not ranked for the second straight week in the AP poll, so we're going to talk about that and what the Orange have to do going forward to crack the top 25. Once again, this is a mini podcast on this Monday on Locked On Syracuse. So the Orange beat Georgia Tech 31-28 on Saturday. Georgia Tech was the 23rd ranked team in the country. There were hopes that Syracuse would be ranked after, but unfortunately, they are not in the top 25, even though they are 2-0. Still good, though, because Syracuse got 63 votes in the latest AP poll, which puts the Orange at 29th overall in the country. So they're on the cusp. They're almost there. Now, Syracuse does have a bye week coming up this week before they play Friday night against Stanford at home. It is unlikely that Syracuse will move into the top 25 before that game. I say unlikely because Syracuse isn't playing, but it is still possible if a bunch of teams ahead of them lose. That is the only way they can actually move up because they're not playing. But it's still possible because they are on the cusp. But chances are, let's assume that going into Friday night, Syracuse will still be unranked. All right? I don't think this is a disrespectful ranking of Syracuse at 29. I do think Syracuse is a top 25 team in the country, but I understand from a national perspective why people don't necessarily believe they're top 25 just yet. And once again, they're right on the cusp. It's not like they didn't receive any votes. They got 63, they're 29, okay? After week one, they received no votes in the AP poll, and they got one vote in the coaches poll. So they had a huge hill to climb after that week one win, where they essentially had to blow out Georgia Tech in week two to crack the top 25. And unfortunately, they didn't blow out Georgia Tech. They still got the win, and I'm not going to complain about it. And to be perfectly honest with you all, if Syracuse recovers that onside kick and they win 31-21, they might have been ranked. But they weren't. And they didn't recover the onside kick. And so they are not top 25 just yet. Having said that, Syracuse received a vote for number 19 in the country. And no, that didn't come from Emily Liker, who is the voting representative from Syracuse. She did have the Orange in the top 25 on her ballot, but it wasn't 19. So Syracuse is still getting a good amount of respect across the country. I am not here to complain about it whatsoever, because here's the deal. We're going to talk about it coming up. But if the Orange just handle their business, they'll be in the top 25 pretty soon. So once again, Syracuse is not a top 25 team in the AP poll just yet. So coming up, what does Syracuse have to do to be ranked going forward? After Syracuse beat Georgia Tech on Saturday, man, was I tired, and I needed a 5-hour energy shot. Because you know what? 5-hour energy fixes tired fast. Whether you have a long list to do for work or a list of DIY projects to tackle at home, take a 5-hour energy shot so you can check everything off your list. If you are like me, you always have a large list of projects for the home. When you get your supplies for the project, do not forget the most essential supply, which is a 5-hour energy shot. With zero sugar and a convenient portable size, it's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. The 5-Hour Energy website has flavors galore like watermelon, tropical burst, grape berry, and more. There is a flavor for everyone. Try them all. On the site, you even have the option to build your own 12-pack or 24-pack. You choose the flavors, and it is delivered right to your door. If you go to 5hourenergy.com, that is the number 5hourenergy.com, and get some 5-Hour Energy product today. You can use my promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. Sandals, sunscreen, snacks for the kids. What do these have in common? You're probably buying a ton again this summer, but don't stress about the cost. Use Ibotta and get cash back on all of your purchases when you stock up on all your summer essentials. Ibotta is a free app that lets you earn cash back every time you shop. Earn on hundreds of items from groceries to beauty supplies, even toys. So you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. The average Ibotta user earns $256 per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip, that flight you've been eyeing, the fancy dinner you've been craving. And hey, you want to go to a Syracuse football game? Well, you use Ibotta. You can go to a Syracuse football game too with the money that you're saving. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKEDONMLB when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back and use code LOCKEDONMLB. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use code LOCKEDONMLB. Syracuse, once again, not in the AP top 25 after its week 2 win over Georgia Tech, but the Orange received 63 votes in the poll, which means Syracuse is right on the cusp at 29th in the country. So now, what Syracuse has to do to crack the all-elusive top 25. Now, for starters, I'm going to be Captain Obvious and tell you win your games. Because if you win, you take care of business, you're going to get voted into the polls. All right, plain and simple. No, I'm just kidding. All right, we're not going to be that Captain Obvious. Here's what Syracuse needs to do in the near future to be ranked. Okay, once again, we're going to assume that the Orange do not move up after their bye week this week. Syracuse plays Stanford on Friday night. Now, Stanford is not a great football team. Just plain and simple. So Syracuse is at home. They're going to be heavily favored. And by the way, that game is on ESPN. So a lot of eyeballs are going to be on the game. You get my drift here. You want to be ranked? Blow out Stanford. If Syracuse blows out Stanford next Friday night, once again, not this week, the following week, Syracuse will be ranked in the top 25 poll. I can almost guarantee it. It would be very difficult to not have Syracuse in the top 25 if they, let's say, beat Stanford 41-7 at home on ESPN in a primetime game. That's what Syracuse needs to do to crack the top 25. If the game is relatively close, but Syracuse still wins, it's possible the Orange do move up just because they're 3-0. But to ensure themselves a ranking after technically week 4, but after their third game, Syracuse has to blow out Stanford. Let's say Syracuse, for whatever reason, is not ranked after a win over Stanford. Well, then you got Holy Cross in the following game, and Syracuse will probably handle their business and be ranked after that win because they'd be 4-0. And it would be very similar to how Syracuse wasn't ranked in the top 25 in 2022 until they beat Wagner by a big margin. It's kind of weird because Syracuse had a win over Purdue. They had a conference win, I believe, over Louisville at home to open the season, and they still weren't ranked after a 4-0 start. But then they beat Wagner by 100 points. Now Syracuse is a top 25 team. So it could be a similar situation to that. But in all likelihood, given the Orange is standing right now in the AP poll, all they got to do is blow out Stanford at home on ESPN in prime time on a Friday night with all the eyeballs watching, and they will be a top 25 team the following week when they got Holy Cross, and then you could just beat up on Holy Cross and maybe move up a little bit in the polls. So once again, Syracuse not ranked in the AP top 25 this week, but it's okay. It's not entirely disrespectful or anything because Syracuse is right on the cusp. Did any of us actually think they were even going to be right on the cusp heading into this season? I think it's a product of Georgia Tech being better than what we thought, but I honestly didn't expect that they would really have an opportunity to be ranked after 2 weeks, which is a pleasant surprise, obviously. I thought Syracuse would be good. I thought Syracuse at some point in the year would be in the top 25. I didn't think we'd be talking about Syracuse being ranked after week 2, possibly even week 3 or 4. So it's a pleasant surprise. And Syracuse doesn't have to do all that much to move up in the polls. All right. Now, coming up with this podcast, I just posted the Poll Friday question on Twitter, which is at LO_Syracuse. It's bookmarked right there and on the YouTube community section. So be sure to take a look and cast your ballot, so to speak, right? The question is, what is the toughest remaining game on Syracuse football schedule, excluding Miami? Because I think we can all agree Miami is the toughest game for Syracuse going forward. That's the final game of the season. And hey, who knows? Maybe both teams are 11-0, and that game essentially determines, well, it wouldn't really determine much. It would be who has an undefeated regular season because they'd both be playing in the ACC title game anyway. But yeah, it's possible maybe they're 11-0. That would be really cool. And maybe they get game day for it. Who knows? That's the Poll Friday question, so be sure to check it out and cast your ballot. Thank you guys all so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. If you liked this video, click that like button. And if you really liked it, subscribe to the channel, turn on those notifications so you know right away when I am dropping the next podcast. Everyone, take care.